Well, hello. Here we are again. Another Saturday morning. Oh, whenever you're watching this, and another video. How much longer I can keep going, I do wonder. We'll have to see. I'll keep on keeping on and see how far I can go before I finally do, finally do fall apart. I think. Only thing is, this isn't the video I planned for today. You see, I'm halfway through shooting a video about 50mm lenses. That, standard, boring focal length, but need to get out and shoot some images to finish that one off. Trouble is, I just haven't been well enough or able even to get out with my camera and shoot the images I want for a portion of that video. So rather than have another blank week, I'm going to have a look at my Fujifilm X-H2. How it's been for me and held up after 2.5 years of use shooting mainly nature and macro with the odd spot of land and seascape photography thrown in for good measure. Now, I've had Fujifilm cameras for many years now, though I am in no way a fanboy, as some call them. Nikon is my first love, and I also have an Olympus as well now. But I had, and still do have, my first ever digital point and shoot camera, a Finepix A350. And then I owned another slightly larger Finepix camera, like a bridge type thing, an A5700, I think it might have been, which gave me some great results, just like this one from Ibiza. In late 2017, I bought an X-T20 with the 18 to 55mm kit and absolutely loved it. So much so that when I needed to get a new camera after a well-documented disaster in early 2018, I went for a Fujifilm X-T2, and after that I had a 3, a 4 and then a 5. And what I love about them really was that old school tactile feeling you get, when shooting with them, all those dials and stuff. But after about 6 months with the X-T5, I had a problem. Now, my photography had to change by necessity. Land and seascape were replaced with macro and nature as my myeloma continued to bite, really bringing with it sickness, fatigue, bone pain, and, well, general malaise, the very thing that's made this video a necessity today. Anyway, I digressed. I bought myself a 100 to 400mm telephoto zoom as well to take pictures of birds, and found myself struggling with hand holding it on the X-T5, and I figured I needed a body with a larger, more substantial grip. Now, I could, of course, had modified the X-T5 with an accessory grip or the like, but to be honest, I wasn't all that enamoured with the camera's build quality. It just didn't have the same solid feel, especially in the dials, as my previous cameras, and especially the OG T2. And even things like the paint finish just didn't feel as tough or durable, with paint chipping off way too easily. So I decided to abandon the old school feel of the T range of cameras and embrace the PSAM life of my Nikon days again, and bought an X-H2. I did look at the 2S, but after getting used to all the extra resolution of the 40 megapixel sensor, I just couldn't bring myself to, it's the wrong word here, but you know what I mean, downgrade? You know what I mean. Anyway, I paid £1,879 for the camera only, no kit lens, in July 2023. I think they're a little bit more expensive now, before any discounts or cashback deals, that is. And good models these days range from about £1,300 to £1,600 from a reputable dealer. Anyway, here we are, 30 or so months and over 25,000 shots later, and I feel qualified to give you my opinion, and it is my own, okay, on this camera. But please be aware, this is not a review really of it. It's just my experience of using it long term. Now, I'm not what you would call a power user and don't rely on things like rapid shooting bursts, except when handheld focus bracketing or autofocus all that much at all, really. I mainly shoot macro, still life and nature, along with the rare land or seascape outing, and my photography is therefore quite deliberate and usually slow paced, apart from that is from the odd bit of bird photography. So if this isn't your use case, unless you really want to know my opinion, then you might as well turn off now. Bye. Anyway, if you are still here, I want to concentrate on 3 main areas: build quality, handling, and image quality. First up, let's have a look at that build quality. Something that I said I found a little lacking in my X-T5, and how the camera has fared after 2.5 years. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm a normal kind of user. I don't abuse my kit, but I don't exactly baby it either. If I'm out and about, it's usually in a bag attached to my walker, and I've only recently put some dividers in that bag. Prior to that, it was just rubbing away in there with whatever else I happen to have with me, usually like another camera and a lens, or my my Osmo or something like that. Man, it has held up. It's held up really well despite all that. There are a couple of places where the paint's been scuffed up a little bit or has chipped away, but nothing hugely detrimental to the camera's appearance. And it's only the paint on the hot shoe rails that has fared badly, so I just removed it all and it looks fine. Actually, I think it looks better in silver than it did when they were painted black anyway. All the buttons and dials, along with the lens mount, feel as tight and as positive as they did on day one, and all the rubbers are intact with no sign of any coming unstuck. And the articulating screen remains firm with no looseness at all. The only issue we've had is with some discoloration or delamination, really, maybe of the viewfinder glass. At one point, I did think about returning the camera for repair, but as it's a cosmetic issue only and doesn't actually affect the operation of or my view through the EVF, I didn't in the end bother. I have no idea how this has occurred, as I've only ever cleaned that small bit of glass with a dry cloth. I've never used any solvents or the like in it. I don't sweat into the viewfinder, and it's not something I've ever seen on any of the other Fujifilm cameras I've owned. Perhaps if you're an X-H2 owner and you've had the same issue, let me know. As for the rear and top screen glass, I immediately fitted screen protectors so they've never been exposed to any danger or even a greasy fingerprint. All of the port covers or doors are similarly as good as they were the day I took the camera out of its box. So build quality wise, absolutely no problems really, other, as I said, the EVF. Onto handling next, and the main reason for getting the camera really, and I find its ergonomics to be just fine. I've got quite large hands and find the grip suits me really well, giving me plenty of grip really. exactly what I was after. Starting off with that EVF, then the unit in the X-H2 is a 5.76 million dot job, I think. 5.76 or 5.67, one of the two. The same as fitted to the GFX 100, and it's quite simply superb. It's easily the best EVF I've ever used. And when I go back to shoot with the T2, my Z6 or my Olympus camera, it's something I notice, and that's something I notice immediately. I rely on the EVF for, composing, focusing, and reviewing my images far more than the rear LCD. So having such a fantastic one is a real boon. Now, physically, the camera may be slightly heavier and slightly larger than my T5, but with the 100 to 400 particularly on it, it actually feels lighter, presumably because it's better balanced along with that, that larger grip. That's not to say it feels unbalanced with smaller lenses attached, but I feel it suits larger bits of glass, like this one, a little bit better, both practically and aesthetically. The camera is hugely customizable, both in terms of programming the various function buttons, the D-pad, and even the touch functionality of the LCD, and that's not affected by that screen protector either. And once set up and learnt, it's just so easy to use precisely as you want. There are also 7 mode dial settings which you can program for different scenarios or shooting styles. It's a lot to remember though, so I made a sticker which I placed inside the LCD door. It would have been nice if the camera were able to display them instead. A firmware update there, Fuji, but for now, a sticker is fine. I do lament the lack of a dedicated metering and focus selector switch, or a collar on the drive collar. But at least with all the customizability of the camera, I've been able to assign them to buttons. Not ideal, but better than nothing. And once set, there really is very little need to dive into the oft-lamented menu system, but I don't find it too bad actually, especially now I'm trying to get to grips with an Olympus camera. Now there's a menu system if ever I saw one. Need a flaming map to find your way around it. Or trail crumbs behind you. Storage wise, the camera has 2 card slots, one CF Express Type B and the other I think it's UHS 2 SD card. I found both to be adequately fast for things like handheld manual focus bracketing, which is the only time I might use a rapid burst mode, or things like 200 frames per second video. Uncompressed RAW files come in at around 80 megabytes, something worth considering computer-wise. Now, talking of which, I've had zero problems with my usual software. That's Adobe Lightroom, handling the RAW files all as you would expect, really. And at this juncture, then, it would make sense, I guess, to talk about image quality. Then, the camera has the 5th generation. I think it's the 5th generation X sensor, which is a 40 megapixel jobby, along with X processor 5, both pretty well cutting edge at time of release. I also always update my camera to the very latest firmware, so right now it's running version 5.2, and that's an easy thing to do as well. I have to say, you try updating the firmware on an Olympus camera, completely different scenario. Anyway, I have to say, I'm really very pleased with all the images I get from the camera. I shoot full-size uncompressed RAW images, or files if you prefer, I guess, which, as I've already said, coming in at around 80 or so megabytes. And the 40 megapixel sensor, it really does render a huge amount of detail. Now, I mainly shoot the camera in aperture priority or fully manual mode, including focus, so I'm not best placed to join in with bashing Fujifilm's autofocus performance. I will just say that on the occasions I've used it, mainly for shooting birds when I use the bird AF detection setting, it's been by and large absolutely fine. Finding birds quickly, even in challenging situations like in trees, where they live, and then locking onto them. Now, I've not used any other makes autofocus in the same way, so I might be missing out. I don't know, but whenever I've needed it, it's been okay. I mean, look at these shots. Look at these shots on screen now. I would say I get maybe a 70% hit rate, which I think is acceptable. You might not, and your mileage might vary, and that's absolutely fine. Now, to clarify here once again, I'm not a Fuji fanboy. I mean, I started with and still shoot Nikon, so they are my first love, really. And now Olympus. So I couldn't care less what camera anyone uses, and I can't understand the hatred some people seem to have for Fujifilm. I mean, it's not that long ago. Autofocus was like, witchcraft. Well, it still is, really, isn't it? And yes, Canon and Sony might be better, but so what? If it matters to you, go and buy one of them instead. Simple, really, anyway. To return to sanity, I find the sensor's dynamic range to be excellent. I generally shoot for the highlights, especially if I'm doing like land and seascapes, and then lift the shadows in post. And really, I enjoy pretty noise-free results I can get in Lightroom. I could probably get better with Capture One or DxO, whatever, but at my age, learning new software really isn't high on my list of priorities, or indeed enjoyable things to do. Colors too are accurate and easily played around with in processing. I tend to shoot at a set white balance of 5,300 kelvins when outdoors, and rarely stray from this, really, because I quite often bracket shots and I don't want auto white balance shifting my exposure. As I said, I shoot RAW anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I find the in-body image stabilization, or IBIS system, I didn't even know that stood for a few years ago, anyway, to be perfectly fine, enabling handheld shooting down to around 1/8 of a second, which I can achieve personally. I got quite steady hands. It's rated for 7 stops as well, maybe a little more with a lens equipped with its own optical image stabilization, or OIS, and it operates over 5 axes. I don't know. I don't shoot an awful lot of video with the camera, and when I do, it's usually slow motion while out in the woods. And I've spotted something interesting, And for that, I set the camera to 1080p and either 100 or 200 frames per second. I find focus to be okay, and I'm generally very happy with video performance, though to be honest, at 40 megapixels, the sensor really isn't designed for video, even though the H designation in its name stands for a hybrid, I believe. It really is a photocentric camera, to my tiny mind at least. For video, though, you're probably far better off in the Fujifilm ecosystem, at least, with an X-H2S or XS20 if you shoot mainly video, both of which share Fujifilm's IBIS system. I use an XM5 for these indoor videos, and generally just an Osmo Pocket 3 for vlogging. Though I might get a gimbal soon. The XM5 doesn't have IBIS, you see, and I'd like to use it more when I'm outdoors. We'll see anyway. See where we go. But what have been the negative points with the camera? Now, the main one has been the old Fujifilm freeze up, where the camera just locks up and basically has a strop. refusing to do anything really. It's like a bit of a teenage, you know, including even switching off. This can happen at any time with absolutely no pattern. I mean, the camera can be fine for weeks or months even before having a complete brain fart, and then they usually, like buses, come along in 2s or 3s before vanishing into the distance again. The only cure is to turn the camera off and quickly disengage and re-engage the battery, and everything is fine. Now, every single Fujifilm camera I've owned since the X-T20 has demonstrated this exact same issue, and despite numerous firmware updates promising to fix it, it remains. I don't think it's unique to Fujifilm though, and I'm certainly aware, having watched some reviews of Sony cameras, that they are, or they can be, similarly afflicted. It's nothing I've ever experienced, touch wood, on any of my Nikon cameras over many years of use, or on my Olympus one over a couple of months of use. Perhaps users of other cameras though can enlighten me, though I found getting anyone to honestly criticise their chosen camera is pretty rare these days. Precious or what. And speaking of that, that's probably about it. There are no doubt some other little niggles and bugbears, but none significant really that come to mind or spoil my use of the camera. If any do between now and uploading, I'll pop them on screen, but I doubt there will be. Actually, well, there is one, and it's not a problem as such, but I wish there were an option to set an X-Pan 65x24 crop in the EVF when composing images. There's enough resolution there, and it's on the GFX range, so come on Fujifilm, give us that option please. So would I recommend this camera? Well, if you're already invested in the Fujifilm APS-C ecosystem and want a PSAM camera, then absolutely I would, unless you want to shoot video, that is, when there are better alternatives such as the X-H2S, XS20, or even the XM5 with its limitations. If you're new to photography though and want to get an APS-C camera particularly, then your only real choices with fully fleshed out dedicated crop sensor lens support are, I think, Fujifilm or Sony, and then it's a case of which one you prefer ergonomically and function wise. Both of them will have their pros and cons for the new buyer, but always try a camera out before you buy one. Put it in your hand, you know, go to a camera shop, and then if you like it, buy it in the camera shop. Don't go to the camera shop, test it out, and then go and buy it online. All right, don't do that. That's horrible. Anyway, sorry, I digress there. That's one of my bugbears. With a Sony system, there's obviously a route to full frame, and you can use their larger full frame lenses with their smaller APS-C bodied offerings. Fujifilm has no full frame system though. Now, of course, Nikon and Canon have their own crop sensor offerings, but currently with a far slimmer lineup of dedicated APS-C lenses, though of course their old full frame lenses and their new Z-mount ones can still be used with, you know, a necessary adapter. Anyway, hopefully, fingers, toes, arms, legs and eyes indeed crossed, I'll be able to get out this week and actually take a photograph and bring you that 50mm video next Saturday. Honestly, it's been in the pipeline since the summer. I've just not got round to finalising it all. Anyway, whatever. Until next time, you all know the drill, alright? Be as nice to each other as possible, and we'll see you all soon. Ta-ra.